When I first stepped into the house, I knew I was the odd one out. It was mid-June, and the city was sweltering. I just landed a summer internship that didn't pay enough to cover rent unless I found a place to split with someone. Craigslist had been a mess. Too many scams, too many red flags. Then I found the post. Room available, month to month, shared bathroom, male only, students welcome. I didn't even ask questions. I showed up, bag in hand, ready to take whatever they offered. That's how I met Jesse. He answered the door shirtless, gym shorts hanging low on his hips, a bead of sweat trailing down his collarbone. "You're Nate?" he asked, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "Yeah," I said, trying hard not to stare. "You're the roommate?" He grinned. "Kind of. The guy who owns the place is gone for the summer. I'm watching the house. You be the third." He stepped aside to let me in. The living room was modest, lived in. A dusty fan rattled in the corner. On the couch, another guy sat hunched over a laptop, earbuds in, completely unaware of our presence. "That's Dylan," Jesse said. "Quiet, coder. Stays in his lane." The room I was offered was barely bigger than a closet, but the rent was cheap, and the location couldn't be beat. I said yes before Jesse could finish showing me the kitchen. The first 2 weeks were uneventful. Jesse was outgoing, loud, always in motion. I'd hear him laughing on the phone late at night, cooking eggs at 2 a.m., doing push-ups in the hallway for no reason. Dylan barely spoke a word. We all kept to ourselves for the most part. But something started to shift. It was subtle, like the way Jesse would glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking, or how he started knocking on my door just to see what I was up to. He had this energy about him, a casual charm that made people want to be near him. Straight guy, obviously. The kind who dated girls with sleeve tattoos and knew every barista in town by name. But I couldn't help noticing the way he'd lean a little too close when asking if I wanted to split a pizza, or how he sat way too close on the couch, leg pressed against mine, acting like it was nothing. One night, it was just the two of us home. Dylan had gone back to his parents' place for the weekend. We were sitting on the couch watching some dumb reality show he'd insisted was so bad it's good. I was slouched, tired, feet up on the coffee table. Jesse, in his usual tank top and gym shorts, was sprawled sideways, one leg casually draped over mine like it meant nothing. "You dating anyone?" he asked suddenly, not looking at me. I blinked. No, not right now." He nodded like he'd expected that. I figured. I turned my head to look at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jesse just smirked. "You've got that lonely guy energy, always hiding in your room," says the guy who does push-ups at midnight for attention. He laughed, his legs still resting on mine. Touché. The episode ended, and the screen went dark. Jesse didn't move. Neither did I. It felt weird, but not bad. Then, without saying anything, he stretched, stood up, and said, "I'm gonna crash. Later, man." I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I woke up late. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, and the house was quiet. I wandered into the kitchen and poured myself some cereal. As I was leaning against the counter, spoon halfway to my mouth, Jesse walked in, rubbing his eyes, hair messy from sleep. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You looked good last night." I froze, cereal soggy in my bowl. "What?" I asked, voice cracking. Jesse didn't laugh, didn't smirk. He just shrugged. "Just saying." And then he walked past me like he hadn't just casually dropped a bomb. I spent the whole day trying to convince myself that Jesse was just messing with me, that it was some kind of joke, just his way of screwing around. But the thing is, Jesse didn't joke like that, at least not with me. And it wasn't just that one comment. It was the way he said it. Calm, offhand. Like he'd just told me the weather, I tried to let it go, didn't bring it up, didn't ask, just pretended like nothing had happened. But from that day on, everything between us changed. We started spending more time together. Not in any formal way, but I'd noticed Jesse hanging out in the living room more when I was around. He'd pause in the kitchen longer than he needed to. I'd catch him looking at me, then looking away quickly, like he was testing me. like he was waiting. One night, I was in my room editing a paper when there was a knock on the door. "Yo," Jesse said, poking his head in. "You busy?" "Kinda," I said, gesturing to the laptop. "Why?" He stepped in anyway, barefoot, shirtless, holding a half-eaten popsicle. You ever get tired of writing about stuff you don't care about? Constantly. He flopped onto my bed like he lived there, arms behind his head, legs stretched out across my blanket. The popsicle dripped onto his chest, and he didn't even notice. "You good with words," he said. "Right?" "I guess. Why?" "I'm trying to write this thing for class. It's supposed to be personal, but I don't do personal. You mind helping?" I blinked. "Now?" "Yeah." He looked at me then, not smiling, not teasing, just looking. "All right," I said, saving my doc. "What's it about?" He hesitated, then sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "It's about confusion," he said finally. "About not knowing who you are or what you're supposed to want. How everyone around you thinks you've got it figured out when really you don't." I nodded slowly. "That sounds honest." Jesse chuckled. "Yeah, that's the problem." There was a long pause, the kind that feels like it stretches out and wraps around the room. He handed me his notebook. I read the first line. It said, "There's something about the quiet at 2 a.m. that makes me admit shit I'd never say out loud." I looked up at him. He was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, like he'd just handed me a weapon and was waiting to see what I'd do with it. "It's good," I said. "Really good." He looked at me then. Not with his usual confidence, not with that lazy smirk, but with something more raw. "You ever feel like you're one wrong move away from losing everything?" he asked. I swallowed. "Yeah." He nodded, like that made him feel less alone. He stood up after that, pacing for a second, like he'd said too much. Then, without warning, he reached down and flicked the edge of my laptop closed. "You need a break," he said. Before I could protest, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me up. "I'm showing you something." He dragged me down the hall, out the back door, into the small fenced-in yard. The night was warm, cicadas buzzing, the city just a low hum behind the trees. We stood there barefoot on the patio. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he sat down on the steps, motioning for me to join him. "Look," he said, pointing up. The sky was a mess of stars, barely visible through the light pollution. "I used to come out here when I couldn't sleep," he said. "Just sit, try to figure shit out. I stopped doing that after high school. Felt stupid." "It's not stupid," I said quietly. He turned to me. "You know what I've been trying to figure out lately?" I didn't answer, just waited. What happens if you feel something that goes against everything you thought you were? My heart pounded. I didn't dare speak. Jesse looked back at the sky, eyes distant. "I don't know what I'm doing, man. But I keep ending up here, talking to you, thinking about stuff I shouldn't." There was another silence, this one louder than the last. Then he stood up, brushing off his shorts. "Anyway," he said, "thanks for reading my draft." And he walked back into the house, leaving me there, under the stars, trying to figure out if I'd just imagined the whole thing. For the next few days, things hovered in that strange in-between. Nothing was said. Nothing changed outwardly. But something was different. Jesse didn't act like someone who'd spilled a secret. He didn't pull away or avoid me. If anything, he was more present. More Jesse. Still loud, still easygoing, still walking around shirtless like it wasn't messing with my head. But underneath that casual surface, there was a tension building. The kind you only notice when it's all you can think about. Every glance lingered just a second too long. Every touch felt heavier. It was like we were circling something neither of us had the guts to touch. Then one night, a thunderstorm rolled through. I was in my room, pretending to read, when the power flickered and cut out. I heard Jesse curse from the living room. "Nate," he called. You still alive? I stepped out into the hallway. The whole house was dark except for the occasional flash of lightning outside. I'm alive, I said. You good? Yeah, just bored now. Wanna hang? I followed his voice into the living room. He'd lit a couple candles, one on the coffee table, another on the windowsill. He was lying on the couch, legs sprawled, barefoot as usual. You trying to summon ghosts or something? I asked, eyeing the candles. He grinned. Just trying to not trip over furniture. I sat in the armchair across from him. The storm rumbled low in the distance, not quite overhead yet, but close. Jesse leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I used to be scared of storms, he said, when I was a kid. Yeah? Yeah. I'd crawl into my brother's room and act like I was just checking on him. But really, I just didn't want to be alone. He paused, the candlelight flickering across his face. I kind of miss being that honest, just doing what you need without thinking about how it looks. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Then he looked up, eyes locking on mine. Do you ever think about what if? He asked. What if what? What if things were different? What if you could want something and not be afraid of what it meant? His voice was quiet, low, like he wasn't really asking me, like he was asking himself. The storm cracked loud overhead, and we both jumped a little. Then Jesse stood up and walked over to the window, arms crossed over his chest. You want to know something? He said without turning around. You're the first guy I've met that makes me wonder. I blinked. Wonder what? What it'd be like to stop pretending I don't notice. That hit like a punch to the chest. He turned back to me, walking slowly, candlelight catching in his eyes. I notice everything, he said. The way you laugh when you're nervous, how you never finish your coffee, the fact that you avoid looking at me when I'm not wearing a shirt. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Jesse came closer, standing right in front of me now. And I notice how your breathing changes when I get close, he added, almost a whisper. Like right now. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Jesse, you don't have to say anything, he cut in. I just needed to say it out loud once. Just once. He stepped back like he'd just touched a hot stove, like he was scared of what he'd just admitted. Then, to my shock, he turned to leave, but as he reached the hallway, I stood up. Wait. He stopped but didn't look back. I crossed the room, slowly. My heart was pounding, my thoughts a mess, but my feet kept moving. When I reached him, I touched his arm lightly. He flinched at first, then stilled. You're not the only one who notices, I said. That's when he turned, really turned, and looked at me. And in the next breath, the air between us snapped. Not with anything dramatic, not yet. Just that moment, staring at each other in the dark, candlelight dancing on the walls, the storm howling outside. Two guys stuck in a house, caught in something neither of us had a name for yet, but we both felt it. Something had cracked open. The power came back on sometime around 3 a.m., but neither of us noticed. We were still on the couch, barely speaking, both of us pretending to watch some late-night rerun, while carefully ignoring the fact that Jesse had his thigh pressed right against mine, and neither of us was moving away. It wasn't like anything had happened. Not really, but everything had already changed. The storm outside had quieted, but the one between us was just getting started. He sat so close his arm brushed mine every time he shifted. He didn't pull back, not once. And when he reached for the remote and let his fingers graze mine, it wasn't accidental. I felt it. The test. I didn't flinch, didn't move. I let it happen. Jesse glanced over. You're quiet. So are you, I said. He shrugged. Don't want to say something I can't take back. Too late for that, I said, and immediately regretted it. He turned toward me, brows slightly raised. Yeah? I nodded slowly. Yeah. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then he gave this soft, almost confused smile, the kind that looked like it was forming in real time. He looked younger in that moment, less sure of himself, like he didn't quite know what to do with the energy between us. Then he said, Can I ask you something kind of weird? I nodded again. Would it freak you out if I just touched your hand? I blinked. You're already touching my leg. He laughed, low and nervous. Yeah, but that's different. I held out my hand. Jesse didn't reach for it right away. He looked at it like it was something fragile. Then slowly, he set his palm over mine. No movement, just contact. It was ridiculous how much heat came off that small point of contact. His hand was warm, fingers slightly calloused. Mine was probably clammy. I couldn't even tell anymore. This okay? He asked. I nodded. He didn't let go. We sat like that for a while, no conversation. Just the TV humming in the background, and our hands resting together, like they'd always fit that way. Then Jesse shifted again, just slightly, and his pinky brushed against mine, then curled under. I looked at him. He didn't meet my eyes. I used to think I'd know, you know? Like, if I were ever into a guy, I figured it would be obvious. He paused. But nothing's been obvious, except this. My throat felt tight. I didn't want to ruin it by overanalyzing. But I needed to say something. I thought you were straight. I thought I was too, he said, finally looking at me. There was nothing playful in his face now, no teasing, just honesty, vulnerability. I still don't know what I am, he said. But right now, I know I want to be here. With you. The words hung in the air, heavier than the storm had been. I squeezed his hand. Then be here, I said. And he smiled again. Small, grateful, like someone who'd finally let themselves exhale. We didn't kiss that night. Didn't even lean in. It wasn't about rushing. It was about being there, together, without pretending anymore. Eventually, he fell asleep on the couch, his head tilted back, mouth slightly open. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall, wondering what the hell just happened to my summer, and knowing I didn't want to rewind a second of it. I woke up stiff, neck aching, curled awkwardly into the corner of the couch. Jesse was gone. For a second, I thought maybe I dreamed the whole thing. The hand-holding, the late-night honesty, the storm that seemed to shake something loose between us. But then I heard the shower running down the hall. My stomach flipped. I sat there for a minute, just staring at the dark TV screen, trying to decide if anything had really changed, or if he was going to walk out of that bathroom and pretend nothing happened. I didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, Jesse stepped out, towels slung low around his hips, hair dripping, eyes half-lidded with sleep. He stopped when he saw me. Hey, he said, voice still scratchy from sleep. You stayed out here all night? I nodded. So did you, for a while. He gave me a crooked smile. Yeah, sorry, my back was killing me. It's fine, I said. I couldn't sleep anyway. He rubbed a hand through his wet hair, then paused like he was about to say something else, but didn't. Instead, he disappeared into his room without another word. And just like that, the bubble popped. For the rest of the morning, we barely crossed paths. I made coffee, he stayed in his room. When he finally emerged, dressed and heading toward the door, he just muttered a quick, "See you later," before vanishing. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around my mug, wondering if I'd completely misread everything. Had I been stupid to think this was more than a one-time confession? A late-night slip in the dark? The hours dragged. I couldn't focus on anything. I refreshed my email 5 times, tried to edit my assignment, even considered texting a friend. But what would I even say? Hey, the guy I've been low-key crushing on maybe isn't totally straight and held my hand during a thunderstorm last night. Do I say something or wait for him to figure his life out? Yeah, that would go over well. He didn't come back until after dark. I heard the door creak open, followed by the unmistakable sound of his keys hitting the bowl by the door. Then silence. For a moment I thought maybe he'd gone straight to his room again, but then he stepped into the kitchen, where I was still parked like a ghost. Hey, he said. Hey. He looked tired. His eyes were red, like he'd been rubbing them too much. His hands were jammed in his hoodie pockets. I wasn't avoiding you, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. I mean, okay, maybe I was, but not because I regretted anything. Then why? He exhaled. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Because it freaked me out how okay it felt. Like, it should have been weird, but it wasn't. He took a step closer. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just confused? What if I mess this up? And what if you don't? I asked. That made him pause. I don't want to hurt you, he said. Then don't. Another silence stretched between us, one of many we'd been collecting lately, but this one felt different. He moved toward me slowly, as if waiting for a signal to stop. When I didn't flinch, didn't move, he stepped close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body. I keep thinking about last night, he murmured, about how I didn't want to let go. His hand found mine again, hesitantly at first. When I didn't pull away, his fingers tightened around mine. I want to know what this is, he said, even if I don't have the language for it yet. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. That's enough, I said. You don't have to explain everything right now. He looked relieved. And something else. Grateful, maybe. Like I was offering him something he didn't know he needed. He leaned his forehead against mine. We stood like that for a while. No kissing, no pressure, just breathing the same air. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could finally breathe. We didn't tell Dylan. Not that there was anything to tell, yet, but we both knew whatever was happening between Jesse and me was walking that thin line where friends become something else. That line where a glance means more, where a silence says louder things than words ever could. For the next few days, everything felt heightened. There was no grand declaration, no change in routine, but little things kept piling up. Like the way Jesse would linger near me in the kitchen, brushing past my back with just enough pressure to make me pause, or how he started sitting next to me on the couch instead of across. Always next to me, always close enough that our legs or shoulders touched. The tension was starting to feel like a fourth roommate. Then came Friday night. Dylan had gone out, some birthday dinner for a friend from his coding boot camp. That left Jesse and me alone in the house. We didn't talk about plans. We just gravitated toward the same space. He ordered takeout. I picked the movie. We ended up on the couch again, this time without even pretending to sit apart. He sat right up against me from the start, our thighs touching. His arms stretched behind me along the back of the couch. By the time the food arrived, I'd barely touched my drink. Jesse had eaten half a box of fries and was sipping beer like it was water. You know this movie's awful, right? He said between bites. Yeah, I said. That's why it's perfect. He smirked. You're into bad things, huh? I shot him a look. Not always. Guess I should be flattered then, he muttered. That shut me up. Jesse leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. You know I meant that, right? What I said the other night? Which part? He tilted his head. The part where I said I notice things. I nodded, my pulse kicking up. I noticed this too, he said, lifting his hand. He brushed his fingers gently against my arm, barely a touch, but it made me feel like my skin was lit up from the inside. I think about it more than I should, he added, like way more than I should. I turned toward him, slowly. And what do you want to do about it? His mouth opened slightly. He hesitated, then said, I don't want to screw this up. Us, whatever we are. You're not. He let out a breath. I keep waiting for it to feel wrong. Does it? He shook his head. Not even a little. The space between us got smaller. My heart was in my throat. Then Jesse leaned in. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. He just closed the gap, paused for a breath, like he was asking permission without words, and then kissed me. Soft, careful, like he was scared I might vanish if he pushed too hard, and I kissed him back. That first moment was everything. Not fireworks, not music swelling, just warmth, closeness, and something settling deep in my chest that whispered, finally. When we pulled apart, he didn't move far, just rested his forehead against mine and let out a shaky laugh. Well, he said, that was something. Yeah, I murmured. It was. He pulled me in again, this time letting the kiss linger longer. His hand found my side, then hesitated, like he wasn't sure how far to go. I took it and placed it on my waist, steadying him. I'm here, I said. That seemed to unlock something in him. We didn't rush anything, just explored each other with that kind of slow, deliberate care you only give when you really want something to last. His touches were tentative at first, but he was learning, adjusting, matching my pace, and I matched his. Eventually, we ended up lying on the couch together, my head on his chest, his fingers lazily tracing circles on my arm. The movie had ended, the credits long over, but neither of us moved to turn it off. For once, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Jesse kissed the top of my head. "So what now?" I smiled against his shirt. "Now we stop pretending." The next morning wasn't awkward. That surprised me more than anything. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of Jesse humming off-key in the kitchen. For a second, I thought maybe I was dreaming, until I rolled over and felt the warm indentation on the couch beside me where his body had been. I sat up, running a hand through my hair. I felt calm, like something that had been buzzing under my skin for weeks had finally quieted. Jesse poked his head into the room, holding 2 mugs. "Morning," he said, voice still low with sleep. "I didn't know how you take your coffee, so I guessed." "You guessed right," I said, taking the mug. He looked relieved. We sat on the couch again, this time in the full light of day. I wondered if he'd shift away, act different, pull back now that the heat of the night was gone. He didn't. Instead, he rested his foot against mine under the coffee table. Casual, but intentional. Like he wanted me to know it wasn't just a one-night thing. "Dylan's gonna be back tonight," he said eventually. I nodded. He looked down at his mug. "We don't have to tell him? I mean, not yet. Or at all. I don't know." He looked unsure for the first time since last night. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," I said. "Least of all him?" He glanced at me. "You sure?" "I'm sure." Jesse leaned back into the couch, letting out a breath. "It's weird. I spent so long trying not to think about any of this, and now I can't stop thinking about it." "About me?" "Yeah," he said, "and about what it means. About who I am now." I stayed quiet. I knew better than to fill the silence when someone needed space to figure out their own thoughts. "I always thought being straight was just default," he said after a minute. "You don't question it. You just go with it. But then you came along and—" He stopped. "And?" He gave a small laugh. "You didn't fit into the boxes I had in my head. You didn't even try to. You were just you. And that messed me up in the best possible way." I reached over and took his hand. "You don't have to label anything," I said. "Not for me." His fingers tightened around mine. "But what if I want to?" "Then take your time." He smiled at that. A real one. We spent the rest of the morning in easy silence, sipping coffee, legs tangled together under the blanket we dragged out the night before. No rush, no pressure, just presence. Later, when Dylan got back, we went back to acting like roommates. Not in a fake way, just quieter, like we were both holding something close to our chests for a little while longer. That night, after Dylan went to bed, Jesse knocked on my door. He didn't say anything when I opened it, just walked in, climbed onto my bed, and pulled the blanket over both of us like it was the most natural thing in the world. He curled into my side, warm and silent. After a while, he whispered, "You feel like home." And I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just held him tighter. We didn't talk much that night. Jesse stayed curled up beside me, his breath warm against my neck, his fingers loosely tangled with mine under the covers. The way his body fit against mine wasn't just comforting. It felt right, in a way I hadn't expected to feel so soon. Or maybe ever. At one point, I thought he'd fallen asleep. But then he spoke, barely above a whisper. "You know what scared me the most?" "What?" "That this was just curiosity. Or a phase. Or me screwing around and hurting you in the process." I didn't say anything. I let him keep going. "But it's not," he said. "It's not that." He pulled back enough to look at me, his face serious, open. "You make me feel like I want to be better. Not different, just more honest. With myself. With you." My chest tightened. That quiet kind of tightness, the one that doesn't come with fireworks, but with clarity. I touched his cheek. "You already are." He smiled, shy this time. like someone still learning how to accept being seen. Then he leaned in and kissed me again. Soft, steady, familiar now. And when he whispered goodnight and tucked himself closer, I knew we'd crossed over into something real. No more pretending. No more what ifs. Just this.